Hello Australia and welcome to the BAP. I brought down that sound way too quickly. Let's bring it back up. I need to bring it back down. It is
Franco Master Mixer.
20th. Well, I can't walk and chew gum. That's my problem. Right. I'm either talking or I'm playing with the board.
I understand. To be fair, Jason and I just sat around doing fuck all. One of us could work the mixing desk.
True that.
But you seem to have it not quite under control.
No, well, the progressive bubble in its leather-bound goodness does not allow for that because
not a lot of these. No,
we need to get
distance.
We need to reorganize the tabling of this place so that we could do that. Have someone running the board.
We suggest we have an audio room in that cupboard there behind the mirrors.
No, but like if we turn this anyway,
it's all right.
That's inside baseball.
I
folks.
find describing the contents of a room very good for radio.
Yeah, depends on how good a describer you are. I guess.
Terrible, obviously. We're not really cutting the proverbial
douchebag filter
mustard.
I think Dean and I have a subject. Or Dean has a subject.
Yeah, it took me a while to get around to watching The Handmaid's Tale. Just had other things on the cards, and today I finally had a chance
stuff to watch
to pick it up, and I immediately had to text Jason to ask him if it got any better, or not any better, but if the situation there's this moment where you have to suspend your disbelief and accept something as having transpired. The world has changed in this dystopian future. And you have to accept all this stuff that I just kept... Every time they go back to the history, I was like, how the fuck does that make sense? It's been at most a decade.
Yeah. Well,
and the performances are stunning. Like Elizabeth Moss is fucking fantastic.
And in the book, The Handmaid's Tale, the book is set like a generation after the changes happened kind of thing. It's not...
Immediately.
Yeah, whereas in the storyline in this is the characters existed before and after the...
Yeah, it's really jarring.
Yeah. And I had some issues trying to believe that as well, but I just sort of suspended it to some extent. But, I mean...
I did get to the point where there's a protest and the religious police, I'm not sure who they are, the guys in black that are always standing with guns, start firing into a crowd with a light machine gun. I got to that point and I was like, okay, I can kind of see why people maybe didn't. But then at the same time, how did you brainwash so many idiots?
I mean, they do mention the fact that there was a false flag terrorist attack.
Yeah, they've mentioned that. And they refer to DC, obviously it happened in Washington.
The other thing is, and you got to remember the context of this, and it sort of it begs a comparison with children and men. Fertility rates have dropped such that, and it's mentioned later on, and this is some of the context I was going to add. It's not really a spoiler, but a Mexican diplomatic group come up, and they're talking with the right-wing Nazi assholes, and they're talking, and one of them talks about how the fact they've got their major cities, in a couple of their major cities, there's been no children born in the last 5 years. So they're looking at a generational extinction extinction within a generation. So this kind of makes the idea that that kind of looking at that kind of existential threat might make people willing to believe and do certain things.
No,
you know what I mean?
I understand that's the proposition they're making, but the rampant rise of fascism as they presented it, with taking all of these historical examples of how women would be treated poorly and meshing it all together.
It's not just historical examples. There's real world examples where that's happening.
No, I know,
nowadays.
But they've created this weird theocratic, I'm guessing, somewhat Protestant government that's okay with extramarital sex and rape. You know, it doesn't even make sense from a religious connotation. Like, even if you have a far-right leader come up and all these people... they're knocking down churches.
They found a religious justification.
Yeah.
I know they found a link in the Bible, but...
That's all they ever need.
No, it's not. I just can't believe this.
I think we've been over this when it comes to gay marriage. That's all they need to derive policy from.
Yeah, but there's nobody arguing for this right now, and in a 10-year period, no one's going to be arguing for
What do you mean there's nobody arguing for it? There's societies that exist.
For handmaids,
there's societies that exist right now that have this situation. You go to Saudi Arabia and places like that.
I'm not disputing that. I'm saying for an American society to devolve in such a short period of time into a theocratic religious society that in no way resembles any religion that they currently have in the Americas.
As I said, there's
and to return slavery, it seems as well, because there's this black cook that I think is a slave. I can't tell, and then there's these obvious sex slave women. It's too much.
I mean, I don't find it. I don't find it as quite as hard to believe as obviously you're struggling with. Given the context they've set, where it's this situation that the world is suffering, fertility rates have dropped to almost zero. And
no one tries science. They seem to hang doctors.
Yeah, well,
except for the weird rapey ones.
the weird rapey ones want to help out. I
don't know,
don't find it.
It's a similar premise to Children of Men that you mentioned, but just handled just ham-fistedly.
I'm not sure why they don't really explain why they don't do the they don't choose to use
IVF in any way.
IVF or any of these kinds of things. They
They've
just
got all these
decide
women
to.
with eggs that apparently can be fertilized, or
This-
maybe it's
well,
the
that-
men who
what
aren't
you, what you do
sterile,
what you do
but-
find out later. You've seen the entire season,
I
haven't you?
have.
That what America has is actually possibly even rarer than the rest of the world. The way they've harnessed and the way they're exploiting their fertile women is in a different way. It's a resource that the rest of the world is looking on with envy. Is what these right wing theocrats have in America. It's a really
Yeah.
weird situation.
I'm not convinced I'm going to make it through the series at all. For me, it's another Sense8, where it's like beautifully shot, pretty well acted, but I just have massive issues with the story to a point where I struggle to.
I think you will
stay
continue
in
to
the
struggle then. I mean, I've enjoyed it because I've suspended belief.
You got to.
You've got to, especially when Canada becomes involved. And
Yeah,
it's just
I was
like,
checking
yeah,
online
it's-
reviews. This was getting like 10 out of 10s from everyone. With only a few dissenting voices were like 1 out of 10, this is boring. And they were like weird misogynist people that were complaining. And I was like, how am I on? I'm not on team misogyny. I just don't enjoy this because it's completely
look.
implausible.
Dean, we didn't want to tell you.
Yeah, apparently. The performances are really engaging. Like Elizabeth Moss is fantastic. Her former friend, whose name I can't remember, that gets abducted and then female circumcised in one of the episodes, is just fucking heartbreaking. Like, there's a lot of stuff there I like. I just can't accept this short period of time, this much craziness.
Well, yeah, I agree. And as I said, the book was different. The book was slightly different in that there'd been essentially a generation had gone past.
I think it is more than one
That had
generation.
been
But yeah.
quite possibly, but there'd definitely been like the character of June in this, who's known as Offred.
Yep, the main protagonist.
The main protagonist in the book was born under that regime kind of thing. It was born with this regime essentially in place, and the handmaidens coming through. Whereas I agree. I went through the most jarring aspect was that point where the women all suddenly discovered their bank accounts had been cancelled.
Yeah.
And I'm going like, people would
And
be
they all got
hitting
fired
the
the same
fucking
day.
people would be hitting the fucking streets, and even Dean might think this is a worthy cause to get out there and protest.
It's not even protest. It's like you have this weird organization of theocrats with guns that somehow convince international banks, some of which are not even based in America, to freeze people's assets simultaneously, while across the country they have enough men to get every business they march into and get all the women fired.
While it's jarring and how sudden it was, you got to remember that it was as recent as 1971. I think women weren't allowed to have credit cards in America, and there were things like that. It's within living memory of people. Situations like this, elements of these stories.
Are we talking
true.
in specific states in America?
No, in America. I don't know if it was federally, but I remember it was even brought up on the Majority Report. They're talking about how he was mentioning how his mother and father had talked about this at one stage. Women were not allowed to have credit cards.
Maybe his mother wasn't allowed to have a credit card because his father was an asshole. I'm just saying that seems very recent.
Well, maybe you're projecting that because we figured out that it's
but you know what's
misogyny.
interesting? That was 40 years ago.
It's within
the show.
It's within
takes
living
place
memory.
like within a 3-month period. All of a sudden, boom! No money, no jobs, no nothing. You women
I
are
get
property
you.
of men.
And I said it was pretty jarring, but I mean, we suspend disbelief for all sorts of things.
I have a hard
You got to
time.
remember, it's essentially a work of fantasy. So
I get that. But when someone goes, "This is a fantasy world and there are castles and dragons," I'm like, okay. When they're
easier,
like,
yeah,
this
I know
is
what you
like modern time, but with a religious theocratic organization controlling America from Anchorage. I'm like, what? But there's rape and extramarital affairs, and you're tearing down churches, and then they have this quote off where one of them's like the meek. Blessed, and then she completes the quote and gets bashed in the face with a stun rod for completing a biblical quote. It's like these people. I don't believe this. This evil woman is just too evil.
far right theocrats are assholes.
They're not.
This is nothing.
They're
new.
not that big an asshole though. They're not that big an asshole.
These guys are assholes.
Yeah.
These guys are fascist assholes.
There's only
They really
10
are.
episodes. There's only 10
You know
episodes.
what? You know what becomes even more interesting is you get more. You know the guy, Fred,
Yeah, the main guy.
the main asshole. That's
Well, he's not an
this
asshole
house.
yet. He plays Scrabble
he-
with her against the rules.
Yeah, his wife. You get her backstory,
Which is great.
which is really interesting. And you're going like, okay, so here's an example of a woman who was along for the fucking ride while it was happening. She was also part of the group that was creating the policy and stuff like that to some extent, and then got totally excluded at some point.
Well, and now she has a real in-depth and personal experience with the phrase "you reap what you sow."
Yeah, she certainly seems... There was a point where they're talking about the United Nations. Obviously, he's talking to the UN and trying to get sanctions lifted, and she's trying to talk to him about policies, and I was like, clearly she has had some sort of background
she's
in things, and he just shuts her down. Like,
well, as you find out, she was a well published author before the
you said this before. Now women can't read,
and now women aren't allowed to read or write. And this is brought up by that Mexican delegation that I was telling you about, where the woman points this out to her, says, "I've read your book. How do you feel about the fact that women can no longer read your book?" And she kind of doesn't say anything. It's interesting. It raises questions, and it's not entirely unaware of itself.
They hinted that in the first episode as well, where one of the girls says something's your Fred's in the news, and she's like, "Oh, I didn't read it. I didn't read the news." And I was like, "That's a weird thing to have to clarify." But obviously,
it's also weird that they're in a
read.
literate society, and as you said, it's much more different in this the TV version, because I imagine the book version, it's not hard to have raised children without having read, but yet all the women know how to read. I like the show, and I'm definitely watching the next season. It's I think it's fantastic.
Do you see any more of the resistance side of things? That sort of interests me.
No,
they hint at it.
I can't believe these twats maintain power at all.
Yeah, look,
it's just it's illogical.
The one thing that jarred me a little bit was the fact that there seems to be copious amounts of men. They can just afford to have men dressed in black on every street corner.
Yeah,
just constant. And I understand that this probably exists in many places as well, but clearly things are automated to the extent that they can just have guys standing around with guns everywhere. Absolutely everywhere.
Yeah.
I don't think this series...
But they also seem to reject technology, so it can't be that automated.
No, they're not rejecting technology. In fact, they talk about how they're expanding on... There's this ecological sort of question that comes up, and how... Like, the thing you keep hearing about is the colonies.
Yeah.
You don't know what's happening out there. But they're one of the things they're talking about, how they're going to be completely on renewables by such and such a year, and America's way ahead of most other places, cutting down its carbon footprint and all this kind of crazy stuff. All this kind of stuff we're trying to go for now, and they're talking about how they've achieved all these levels.
Oppression of women.
And then they've got the oppression of women, and also the colonies. You just gather that's just slave labor.
I just have to point out, Jason, correlation does not imply causation at this moment. Just because they oppress women doesn't mean that their green carbon footprint is down. Those two may correlate. There's definitely no direct cause there.
Okay.
Not that you were implying that, but if any of our listeners are out there, they would love to hear a good old fashioned correlation causation moment.
Yeah, it's as I said, I'm definitely in for the duration, at least for another season. I'll check it out.
Yeah, you were down for Sense8 as well.
Yeah, I'm very much down for Sense8.
I think one of the other things...
What the fuck? Once again, you're on the outer here.
Well, Sense8 was terrible.
Well, so most of your grievances aren't the main focus of the show, though. The main focus of the show is Alfred's experience. So,
June. A woke person should never be calling her off.
June's experience under a totalitarian society.
Yeah.
So, yes, obviously their execution of the broader universe of that new American state.
Do you know what the problem is, though? The Empire in Star Wars makes more sense than this Empire does.
Yeah, as I said, I think one of the chief things, and whether they had to make allowances for television, was making it over such a short span of time, where all these changes were enacted, and we're supposed to expect that these people who were previously free are just living under a regime where they're completely second-class citizens immediately, and it seems.
And that the people are their betters are okay with it. Like the number of times that the women who are married to the commanders
are cool with it. Yeah,
are cool. It's just like they wouldn't be cool with that, because that shit can turn in an instant, and you could be in their spot. You just wouldn't be cool.
I don't think we get enough of a view of life outside those protected little enclaves, because it can't be. You know what I mean? We see life at a commander's house, and we don't see much outside those commanders' house where the handmaidens are. There's got to be a vast number of people that are just living.
No, they're on the streets with guns, Jason.
Yeah, well, actually, that's probably it.
Yeah.
The rest of them are just armed and dressed in black in the streets.
Yeah, I don't know. Look, it's interesting, but
as a wrap up to the credit card issue you brought up, it wasn't that American women were specifically barred or banned from having credit cards. Banks were just being dicks.
Were they really?
They were just discriminated at their own discretion. until the 1974, what was it here? Equal Credit Opportunity Act.
Where they enforced it, basically.
Where they're not allowed to discriminate based on gender.
Okay.
So the banks would say, oh, you got to bring a man along when you apply. Planning on having any children? Are you married? Stuff like that. As part of the application. So they weren't allowed to do that anymore.
Some real time.
You know what? It's actually in some ways a shame that the banks have stopped asking so many questions about credit cards, because they just give them out to people now who in no way can afford the repayments, and we're kind of in the reverse situation where the banks maybe should be like, so are you planning on being able to pay this money back, or are we going to be garnishing your salary further? To men and women.
Credit crunch was women's fault.
No.
There's
some
correlation, however, as Dean is quick to point out. No
it's a shame that
causation.
the banks have gone completely the other way with that message.
Yeah.
Oh, we can't ask women questions? We won't ask anyone any questions. Other than, do you want more credit? You get a card, you get a card, you get a card. Everyone gets a card.
Okay, as we like to do every week, we'd like to do the Game of Thrones wrap-up.
Which episode?
We're going to do the legal episode.
There was another leak. HBO Spain, I think it was, leaked what will air tomorrow, Sunday in America. That got leaked on, I think it was Tuesday or Wednesday or something crazy.
I don't know, big hola to Spanish HBO affiliates.
Well, someone's getting an hola from their job, I imagine.
So we keep it straight. Which episode are we talking about?
We're going to be talking about
Episode 5.
Episode 5.
Okay.
Which was not really appropriately named, if you ask me, because
Yeah,
there's
it was
very little
odd.
of
It
Eastwatch.
ended at Eastwatch.
I was wondering why. I was expecting it to be like Hard Home, which was an episode where the majority of the action
Was it Hard Home?
was at Hard Home. If you name an episode after something, normally it features prominently, whereas this was just like right at the end, they basically show up.
So we started the episode on the Rose Road, my favourite
Road.
Game of Thrones LGC card.
Where our previous questions about Bronn and Jamie are just answered off the cuff and with no further reference to what happened in the previous episode.
Yeah.
They pop up out of the water and everything's fine.
And I was willing to forgive
Quite
that.
a distance from the battle as well, though.
Yes.
Where once again, there are no outriders or scouts looking for people.
Well, maybe it's across. I don't know. You could believe. I just couldn't believe they could get that far.
I kind of wish...
Jamie had a lot of armor.
I'm jumping ahead here a bit, but I kind of wish that Jamie had been taken prisoner and then was released by Daenerys to go and tell Cersei to calm the farm and surrender. Because he went there anyway and said all of that. It just would have made more sense if he had been sent.
And it would have saved... Yeah, it would have saved Davos and Peter Dinklage having to go into
all of these problems.
King's Landing, and it's believable. It's kind of believable. Yeah, she goes, look, captures Jamie and says, "We need to sort this shit out." Although at that stage, I don't think John and her had that conversation.
Just send her there to tell Cersei to surrender, which is what he does when he gets home. He's like, "We can't fight it. This was one dragon. She has 3." At that point in time. And he has this big chat with Cersei about why they need to end the battle, and all of that could have happened if the Dink had have just convinced Dany.
But then we don't have our little Gendry coming back into the fold scene either.
Yeah.
Well, more importantly, we don't have the Bronn and Jamie.
That conversation that was pretty good,
which reestablishes Bronn's modus operandi.
Yeah, it did
in true form. I don't fight dragons.
No surprises with that.
We were surprised in the previous episode where Bronn acted totally out of character, fighting dragons, saving Jamie from the mouth of a dragon. He doesn't do that shit.
Yeah.
But he explained why he did. Which
next episode he's like, she's not happening again.
That's it.
It's a one-time deal.
One of.
This is all about me getting the castle.
Yeah.
But when 3 dragons are on the scene, Bronn's out.
Yeah. So was that Rose Road scene, did that just end with Jamie leaving, or did it continue to the Dickon and Randall thing? Yeah,
and that includes the Dickon and Master Tarly getting their punishment for not bending the knee.
Well, actually, I suspect that was more about our principal cast going to support a certain amount of wages.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and we saw Daenerys take into the family tradition with how she executes people.
Yeah,
by flame.
Seems somewhat out of character.
I don't know. I found that reasonably believable there. It was a case of she gave him a choice, and she didn't burn. She didn't just go, okay, line everyone up who wasn't, because a lot of guys weren't kneeling.
Well, they did after that.
She grabbed the 2 lords, made an example of them, bang, problem under control.
I have major issues with that whole scene.
Really?
Not just because it Randall Tarley was her father's most loyal bannerman, who probably would have supported her claim anyway.
Well, he wasn't at this point. But you mean he should have
In the
supported.
former wars, he fought for the Targaryens, and he was the only one to ever defeat Robert Baratheon in the field. He stayed loyal up until the end of the war. It doesn't make sense for him to not be loyal, but in addition to that, the convention at the time, when you capture a lord, is you treat them well. The other men don't get looked after, but lords are generally looked after.
She's
and then
looking to
traded
break
back
the
for
wheel,
cash.
Dean. She's looking to break that wheel.
That's not how you break the wheel.
What?
Burning
By
people alive.
by executing the people that
By keeping the
perpetuate the
1%ers
wheel.
in power.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
definitely how you break the wheel. There's no one left to turn it.
I think that's how you pretty much get everyone to decide you're as bad as your father and need to die.
Well, I don't know. If the common folk say, hey, they're executing the lords and leaving us alone. As a common folk,
Jason, they didn't. They burnt all the food.
as a common person, I'm kind of thinking I'd probably be on board with that to some
You're
extent.
not going to survive the
I
winter.
like there was the way they always did it in that framing in the Mel Gibson movie with William Wallace.
Where are you going, Jason? With
The
this?
Mel
Oh,
Gibson.
hang on, so it was the Jews' fault.
No, it's where so you had the Scottish peasantry lined up against the English, and the Scotsmans going, "Why am I going to die on this field? I just have to either die here or I just pay them taxes anyway. So fuck it, I'm going." It's like, what's the difference? In this case, it's very different. They're not killing killing the common folk. They're killing the lords, and
She
the
burned
rest
plenty
of
of
the-
soldiers in the episode prior. She gave some the
Well,
chance to bend
they
the
were
knee.
in a battle episode prior. Afterwards,
I don't think the
they all
soldiers
bent
got the
knee.
memo they were in a battle. They were just walking some grain home, and then she came in with the dragon and was like, P.S. This is a battle, bitches.
Which is once again Jamie's fault for staying the rod.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe. I do like, though, the show for a long time has presented Daenerys as being a character that you kind of root for.
Yeah, rational and reasonable.
Rational, and in the book, she's not like that. You kind of get the feeling that she's maybe a little bit like her dad. And this is the first time the show has done that, where you're like, yeah, nah, she's got that Targaryen gene where they
Ruthless.
really get off on watching people burn. So does Cersei. She gets off on watching people die.
Yeah.
The number of times in the show, you'll notice it, as soon as she kills someone, she goes and bangs Jaime, or like, she just, it's interesting that she's basically the Mad King as well. She gets off on murder.
So you're saying there's a correlation between brutal murder and incest?
Well, brutal murder and arousal of Westerosi lords, ladies.
So after that, we went back to Winterfell, where Bran commandeers a unkindness of ravens to go see where the army of the dead are.
They flew quick, hey.
They did. Super ravens.
Supersonic ravens they got from Winterfell to Eastwatch, record time.
They're teleporting all over the joint.
Yeah.
And then from there, he was shocked. Well, he wasn't shocked, but he obviously felt the need to send out ravens to the seven corners of the empire.
I thought it was interesting when he saw the Night King, he lost control of the ravens as well, which leaves me wondering if the Night King isn't also a bit of a warg, so he doesn't have powers over something like that. Obviously, he can control the dead, but it seems like maybe he can also either block Bran's psychic powers or also control
Disrupt
animals.
or something.
Yeah.
So from there, we went to Old Town, where we got to catch the receiving end of one of those ravens.
With
where
Sam Slayer.
the Archmeisters were sort of deliberating over the message. and
Dithering.
They were skeptical
Of course they're skeptical.
of this army of the dead and the threat it posed. They weren't even sure it existed. They were questioning the fears and
Yeah.
whatnot of the Northmen.
What's also interesting, in the books, there's a couple of maesters who basically run the studies of greater mysteries or magic, and they talk about that in the show a bit, where I think they talk about in the show where Maester Lewin at Winterfell talks about it, like he tried for a year to learn magic, but he didn't have the aptitude for it. But there's an Archmaester at the Citadel who still does those courses, but some of the magic starts working at the Citadel as well, which they don't mention in the TV show, which I think would have been nice to have. All of a sudden, these other powers that they used to know about are working. So
As
the Maesters
the old gods are
wondering what's going on.
reasserting themselves and things like that.
Something's happening, and they're aware of it too. But they seem to have been dumbed down for the TV show.
Just completely dumped it out, and everyone's just being entirely skeptical, and it's gonna take some undead on their doorsteps before they do anything
Which
about
is a
it.
shame, because I'm pretty sure in the books it's Archmaester Marwyn. He's the guy in charge, and he leaves to go find Dany. He's like, I'm going to go declare myself for the Targaryens. And it's like, well, that's interesting, but also not in the TV show.
So in a fit of impatience, Sam Tarly completely misses that his girlfriend has just found one of the most closely held secrets in the
Rhaegar's
kingdoms,
marriage
annulment, and his
Elia?
subsequent
Was it
marriage to Alina or
Lyanna,
and completely glosses over that because he's furious that the Archmaesters won't listen to him.
making Jon not a bastard.
Yeah, and in fact the rightful heir.
Yes, he's Jon Targaryen, the heir to the throne.
Is that in the books?
Yeah, it's not.
It's hinted at or something.
They haven't revealed it 100%, but even in the very first book, there's a couple of times when Ned gets stabbed in the thigh with a spear by Jaime or by one of Jaime's men, and he has that fever and he's all like, they're not sure if he's gonna live or die in King's Landing. He gets an infection. He has all these dreams and he keeps going back in the past, and he keeps going back to the Tower of Joy and his sister in a bed full of blood and dying, handing him something and saying, "Promise me, Ned, promise me." And it's heavily implied, "Promise me you'll take care of my baby." And it's also, that Jon's not Ned's kid, it's his nephew, and that he's there. She was there because of Rhaegar, and there are 3 Kingsguard guarding that Ned had to fight through, which is in the show as well. And the Kingsguard are sworn to protect the royal family. So while there's a civil war on, and Robert Baratheon is trying to take control of the throne, the 3 strongest members of the Kingsguard are nowhere near the battles. They're at that tower, looking after the heir to the throne. But again, it's all just implied, and the TV show did imply that too by having Arthur down there. If we had been at the Battle of the Trident, it wouldn't have turned out like that. But our job is here. And it's like, okay, yeah.
So from there we went back to Dragonstone.
So where's Sam going then? Where is Sam going after that?
Oh, who the
north.
fuck knows?
He's going to get there quickly though, probably.
Well, is he
Wherever
going to
he-
Eastwatch or Winterfell?
I don't know.
But wherever he's going, he's going to get there suddenly and without any particular.
That might be.
length of
Maybe we
time.
don't see him for the rest of the season.
He had 2 horses on that cart.
Okay.
Are we implying that he can't go fast because he's fat, but he has 2 horses, so he can
2
go?
horses.
I'm implying that maybe it's a turbo cart now.
Turbo cart, right?
I think Gilly starts taking over the learning and she becomes the Archmaester. She's pretty quick. She's pretty quick to learn on that stuff.
Quick study.
Mm.
From there we went back to Dragonstone, where Daenerys comes back after her victory to catch up with Jon. And apparently, allegedly...
Again in record time.
Yes. Well, she was on a dragon. Does that count?
Yeah, but she's left her army undefended in the fields.
They're an army of
foreign controlled
Dothraki.
territory.
They'll be right.
They're an army of Dothraki. And even Jaime said, forget the dragons. He said the Dothraki were going to defeat any army they put in the field by themselves. So I think the Dothraki are okay. They'll be all right.
Apparently...
They're alright if they're together as a group. If they just start wandering around.
So we get to see Jon Snow make friends with Drogon.
Yep.
Allegedly, Daenerys was surprised by this. I didn't see any sort of emotion on her with this.
Really?
But allegedly, she was meant to be surprised that Drogon
I
allowed Jon to
thought
touch.
there was a look of surprise on Amelia Clark's poorly acted face. But there was a bit.
I think, look, at the start of the moment when she started reaching for him, she was like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And then after that, she was like, plain face,
Yeah.
no emotion. Not even my eyebrows shall move, for the internet mocks me when my eyebrows move.
Yeah.
So apparently that was important.
And then there's a bit of a wistful looking at Jon by Daenerys as he departs
Yep.
with Lord Friendzone.
Yeah, she forbids him from going as well. I haven't said you can go. It's all a bit...
Yeah.
And then, yes, Jon decides he's leaving. Says he's going.
I have a question about this, and it's probably not really someone you can answer. But what the fuck was the point of Jorah having grayscale at all? Considering it got solved really fucking easily by Sam. Maybe it was to show Sam was capable of... I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, but Jorah's grayscale didn't matter. Like, it just... He had it. He fucked off for a bit. He got cured. He came back. What did that achieve?
Yeah. No, you're right. And except to expand on Samwell's... Give a bit of time for Sam.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, what else are you going to do with Sam down there for a while?
I don't know.
But it seems like
Sam left as well. Why does Sam have to go to the fucking Citadel?
it's a pretty fucking convoluted way to get that kind of exposition out there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. As you said, it might just be things they go, hey, we can include this from the books
Yeah.
at very little expense. Let's do this.
Yeah, I think maybe they were
Displaying
planning on doing more with it, and then
I
they
think
didn't.
so. And then, they
But it
went
just,
in a different direction.
It's just, they've gone in a different direction. It's like,
Now we've got to fix him up.
yeah, we're going to close that plot line off. I keep finding this with the show. It's like, well, why is that even in the show? I guess you only plan a year at a time.
So what happens in the books with the grayscale? Does
Don't
it
know.
kill? Oh, okay.
It's not Jorah that has it. It's this guy named John Connington
Okay.
who is working for Aegon Targaryen when he lands at Griffin's Roost and they take Storm's End, and he's hiding the fact that he's got grayscale from everyone. I think it was going to be a plague, but it's obviously not in the TV
didn't
show.
they hint that at the book as well? They said because Sam's cured him, and the Archmaester says, you could have caused an outbreak or something. I think he mentioned something like that. Yeah. But you're right. It didn't. It's a little bit like Indiana Jones in that first Raiders of the Lost Ark movie.
Yeah,
But if it wasn't there, the story would have progressed exactly the same way.
it wouldn't have mattered.
So the wrap up of the Dragonstone segue was basically they decide that to get Cersei on board with Team Fight the White Walkers, they need to get proof of
The
White
worst
Walkers.
plan ever. Yeah, they come up with the worst.
Because I
plan
don't even think
in history plans.
even if they present Cersei with proof, i.e., an undead, I just don't think she cares. I think she's past caring. I think she will go. She will take whatever advantage she can get.
She's got a Red Queen and off with their heads.
I just don't think she'll care.
But it did lead for an internet explosion of Magnificent Seven, Expendables, name whatever posse of people you want for.
Yeah, not that I've seen the follow-up
The
episode.
Suicide Squad.
Not that I've
was
seen the
mine.
follow-up episode at all, but the build-up isn't worth it.
Then we went back to King's Landing, where Jaime has to give Cersei the bad news about the defeat of the remnants of the Tarly and the Lannister army. Tyrion has a secret meeting with Jaime, which Cersei already knew about.
Yeah, apparently.
And Davos finds Gendry.
Which
Yeah.
I thought was pretty cool.
I like the Tyrion and Jaime thing. It wasn't the best writing, but it was good enough. You know,
Drove the plot.
it was good to give him a little moment. I didn't expect them to ever see each other again in the books. I still don't expect them to see each other again in the books, but I sort of liked the way that, Jaime at least now knows Tyrion didn't kill Joffrey for 100%.
I think he knew that, but
I'm pretty sure book Jaime does know.
Yeah, I don't think Jaime anyone other than Cersei actually really believed that Tyrion did that.
Yeah.
Cersei was the only one invested in that little. But Gendry's hammer,
Oh, awesome.
fucking awesome hammer.
Yeah, wonder if he keeps it.
Yeah, that's right. Hands it off. First chance he gets. Oh yeah, okay.
No, beautiful hammer. Baratheon
Well
stag
swung.
on it as well.
Well swung
Well
when he had
swung.
to.
Yeah, no. Pretty good. Pretty good. It does leave me to wonder what the point is of Gendry at this point in the story as well. Why bring him back? They have a habit of Game of Thrones, like when they brought Osha and Rickon back for one episode
Just to
and
kill him, yeah.
kill him off. It's like, why the fuck do you even bother? Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't serve a purpose at that point.
If I wasn't fairly prescient in some ways, I would almost think that's what was going to happen.
Well, we're not 100% prescient. I just feel like Gendry doesn't have a story.
Yeah,
He doesn't seem integral to the story.
They are setting up that friendship between him and Jon to some extent, aren't
And House Baratheon is at the moment a dead house. They don't have any heirs. Stannis is dead, Renly's dead, Robert's dead. Like, maybe they're going to have Gendry be the new Lord of the Stormlands. Maybe. Although I don't see why that matters.
they? Yeah, that's right.
And that was the end of the episode. Oh well, we did go over to Eastwatch where we saw the Magnificent Seven go
Where they
beyond the
hooked
wall.
up, where they formed the rest of the Fellowship. They grabbed the Hound and
Yeah, Hound.
Yeah.
hooked up with Tormund.
I
He was asking where Brienne was.
I like the way they kind of had those little character moments where they pointed out people knew each other a bit, which was good. I don't think they've done it enough in the show.
I think Tormund's one of the best characters in the show for his little moments when he comes up.
Yeah, same as the Hound. I wonder if there's going to be a
Did you bring
Church
the
of Hound
Did you bring the
established
big woman?
with his very concise and straight to the point. Are we going or not? Well, everyone's going on monologues.
That's right. We're going north of the wall. How can it be worse by bringing us along? Just come on.
It can be worse if you bring the Hound. It literally can be worse.
I don't know.
if
He
you
might
bring the
make it
Hound.
a quick death for you.
Yeah. Yeah. He might freeze up when he sees something. Or maybe he'll throw some rocks and anger some people. I don't know. I don't know what might happen. But he's a fucking liability.
If only an affiliate station of HBO released an episode early,
Yeah.
we wouldn't have to worry about
We
this.
wouldn't have to worry.
We would know the answers.
Yeah.
Well, 2 out of 3 of us would know
How
the
many
answers in a hypothetical
episodes are
situation.
left after this leaked episode
One.
that we haven't
There are only
seen?
7 episodes this...
Right.
There are only 7 episodes in this season. The one that has aired last week was episode 5, Eastwatch. The one that is airing tomorrow is 6, which is Beyond the Wall. And then there's the final episode after that.
And
So
then it's
why only 7 episodes? Is that like we can make one less episode and make the same amount of money?
I think they could have. They struck a deal with HBO to get 13 episodes by splitting it up over 2 financial years.
And these last 2 episodes, one was 70 minutes, and the last, and another one's the last one's going to be 80 minutes.
Yeah.
Right.
So they've got the
They're
same
extra long.
They've got the same
episodes as
budget they'd normally have for a year for making Game of Thrones over each year, and they get to sort of tell more story. But the pace they've moved up. You know, remember when you were young and you would be like writing something on a page when you were drawing, and you get to the end, and you have to cram in like 8 letters at the end. That's what their writing's doing. You know, they've gone Game of Thrones.
Yeah. Because again, I mean, it's been 7 years of leading up to this Night King, this final, like all these battles between the various houses. But really, this is the ultimate sort of battle. This is the real thing that's coming up.
Yeah,
and it's going to be essentially half a season of it. Really,
I'm guessing that also they probably had sort of 7-year contract deals with people as well. So like getting it to go 9 years or something,
it's going to be more expensive.
Very hard. And yeah, I don't know. It's all right. It's all right. They're still delivering like sort of satisfying stuff. It's just the pacing is changed dramatically.
I know we're a little bit jaded, possibly with this episode that we shouldn't have seen so far, but which wasn't all that bad. But the previous episode, was fantastic.
The Field of Fire one was great.
It was fantastic.
The thing is, Game of Thrones historically was a show about smart characters that were involved in a plot, and now it's a show about characters. It's a show about a plot that features characters.
Yeah,
like it's just event, and my favorite characters, the Tyrions, the Varys, the smart characters, Littlefingers, have just been whittled down. They're nothing, and they don't even use like everyone's basically just a one-line joke at the moment. Joke's probably the wrong word.
Everything they've been simplified to drive the plot further, as opposed before, where it's like philosophical things they would talk about. You know, the gremlins in politics.
Yeah. Just remind
me. The machinations.
Littlefinger's plotting. Was that in the last episode where?
No. Well, yeah. The last episode we saw was when he revealed to the little ninja that her sister.
There was a letter.
Yeah, there was a letter.
Yeah, that's okay.
So the seeds have been sown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something needs to happen. He needs to either die or do something monumental. Make a big play.
I suspect we got to see at least a couple of major deaths in that last episode of the season.
More Starks?
No, I think Littlefinger will go. I wouldn't be surprised if Cersei goes as well.
I think it's time for Cersei to die. She's far too unbalanced.
It depends what they want to achieve. If they want like a big battle with the Night King that goes like, then I think Cersei has to go soon. Or I don't know. And Euron's a problem too. Like, what do you do with the Greyjoy thing? Like, I don't know. Maybe they won't kill Cersei yet, but
that's right. We haven't had Euron in there for basically 2 episodes either.
No, he's mysteriously.
So he's bound to pop up again.
His very fast ships can only sail westward quickly, and he's sailing back. It's against the wind. He's going very slow because those westerlies they're very quick down near the Reach.
Trade winds.
Yeah.
So, shall we move into the newsies?
Yeah. Yeah.
This week we had a continuation of people having secret citizenships. The last one I noted was Senator Nick Xenophon has some weird ass archaic colonial citizenship bequested upon him from Britain.
Because back in the day, Cyprus used to be a British colony when his father was born there.
Oh wow!
So he had renounced his Greek citizenship under his mother and his Cypriot citizenship under his father, but he did not know that when his father was born, and only for till his father was 3 or something, it was a British colony. Therefore, he was entitled to British citizenship.
And it's automatically conferred on you.
Yeah.
And grants him pretty much no rights.
Yeah, I guess what's funny is that like it's so hard to get citizenship these days than anywhere else.
Yeah.
The fact that they'll just be bequeathing these on people that didn't even fucking know they had it in the past is just
he's got a British overseas citizenship, I think it is.
Yes.
Something like that. And so he can't vote in England. He can't live in England. It doesn't entitle him to enter. It's just an acknowledgement
It's just
of
enough
his
to
history.
get him ejected from Parliament, perhaps.
Maybe. He referred himself to the High Court, though, which is nice. Other people sort of dilly-dallied around that. Malcolm Roberts.
What's Barnaby Joyce's status? He's at the High Court as well?
So the full list of people being referred to the High Court obviously started with Scott Ludlam and Larissa Waters, who have resigned anyway. But then Matt Carnarvon, Barnaby Joyce and Fiona Nash from the National Party have all been referred to the High Court. Malcolm Roberts from Pauline Hanson's One Nation Burqa Party has been referred to the High Court. And then now Nick Xenophon.
So
The only man in Parliament that's known to be safe from all this is Tony Abbott.
yeah. Yeah. So if the High Court hands down a decision, is that going to be on all these cases in essence to say, look, we're going to overlook it?
They're individually treated.
The High Court will answer the question put to it. And I don't know what the question is going to be, but it'll probably be individual questions about individual people. And they only interpret the law. They don't make. And so if the law is silly, but there's no wiggle room, which I'm pretty sure is the case, then they get ejected from Parliament.
Because their citizenships are all different and how they acquired them are all different.
Yeah.
So I think I probably...
Except Malcolm Roberts, who was born overseas and has
Yeah.
his citizenship from that, which is the same case as Scott Ludlam and Larissa Waters, who have got previous case law that shows they would be disqualified.
Surely the only line of argument they could present to the High Court was, I did not know I had this citizenship.
Ignorance of the law is no excuse.
I know, but that's...
Yeah.
No, you can be aware of the law. You're ignorant of your own... It's not the law you're ignorant
That's
of.
the
it's
only
the,
angle I can
you're
think,
ignorant of your
regardless of whether
status.
it's valid or not.
The last ruling says as long as you've made a reasonable effort. So someone like Nick Xenophon,
might be okay.
I think might be okay because he
Because
went with the two countries that
I was
he
going
was
to say,
aware
you
of.
can be completely aware of the law, but you don't realise that...
It applies to you?
You don't realise that East Bangalore has conferred their citizenship on you just by winning a lottery by accident or something back 30 years ago. Who knows? But you've got another citizenship and that would count against you. But obviously, that's why I think Nick Xenophon
Were
will
they
be okay.
Pakistan 30 years ago, though?
Yeah, they were. East
East
Bangladesh or whatever it was.
Yeah, but
East
that
Pakistan.
was East Pakistan at the time. So they couldn't have conferred me the Bangalore citizenship back then. I would have a Pakistani citizenship, sir.
Okay.
No, you're right.
We understand. But that's why, so Nick Xenophon, as you said, hopefully off okay, because it just seems ridiculous.
You know what was more ridiculous? Did you see Julie Bishop's attacks on the Labor Party, accusing them of treason?
Yeah, conspiring with New
with a
Zealand.
foreign government to destabilise.
I also saw the New Zealand version of the project where they were taking the piss out of.
They were taking the piss out of her in Parliament. Someone brought her a alfoil hat.
Yeah,
It was ridiculous. And of all people, Corey Bernardi quite rightly pointed out how ridiculous they were being about it.
Yeah, that was funny for me because Corey has had a bit of a rough serve from the government over the times. But when they tried to censure Penny Wong, once it came out it was Penny Wong's office a staffer from Penny Wong's office who had talked to their counterpart in New Zealand, Corey Bernardi voted against it and gave a little speech to say why. It was like, no, because this shit happens all the time on both sides of Parliament. Like when Malcolm Turnbull talked to the British Parliament and denied me the right to speak when I was travelling there because he didn't like me. It was like, your chickens have come home, Turnbull. And their name be Corey. Corey had a good week, actually.
He had a brilliant week for the Conservative Party.
Yeah,
I think,
he actually looks like a sensible force in politics.
Wow.
He also pointed out that with this many people potentially standing illegally within the Parliament and no idea of who else is affected,
and still voting,
we should suspend Parliament and have an independent audit into every single sitting member to work out who is not allowed to be here. And until that's resolved, we probably shouldn't be passing legislation because people will complain. And I was like, you know what? He's not wrong.
it's a very reasonable
It's a very reasonable argument. And what's going to happen now is if that whole marriage debate thing goes to a plebiscite poll, Corey will be like, yeah, but you guys were all standing illegally when you voted to do that, so I don't know if that's valid now either. Corey's just, he's in a win-win position.
Yep.
Yeah, I think we talked about this before. People that are looking for an excuse not to vote or to vote in a certain direction on marriage equality, they're getting a nice, easy one presented to them on a silver platter. They can just take it up.
Yeah, I voted against it because the government's invalid.
I think they perhaps would have found a reason to vote a certain way regardless.
Oh, no doubt.
But this is a nice, easy one for them. They just go, yeah. Well. And it does sound entirely plausible.
Yeah. You know what wasn't plausible? Is Pauline Hanson wearing a burqa in the Senate. As soon as that happened, I had to post it. It took me ages to work out how to steal photos off Twitter. Like save them and then post them to Facebook.
All right.
Because if you link to a Twitter feed, it gets their profile picture and like first few photos they've got. And I want an exact specific one. Anyway, but lunacy. The one thing I will say about Pauline Hanson, I'm a big believer in fighting power where power resides, and it appears so is Pauline. You know, she takes her racist fight to where the power lives, Parliament, and she puts it on display for everyone to see. And I don't think that motion was as effective as she thought it was. I'm not even sure what she was planning.
Yeah, I don't think she
just whipped it off at one point. Didn't even have a big speech prepared, or I don't know what it was
didn't
about.
seem to have that next play mapped out as to what was going to happen after she took it.
Maybe if she, had explosives strapped underneath her burqa, she might be proving some sort of point.
Was she expecting some widespread support amongst the Conservatives or something like that? But she got quite universally ridiculed. So, and even Darth Brandis came down on the correct side.
Georgie Boy gave a good speech. I was a bit proud of him. So was
Are you sure that motion was pride, though?
Well, it was surprise and pride. I don't know. George is a member of the moderate faction of the Liberal Party, which I have said before in a mocking way and laughed at that fact. And this week he sort of demonstrated that, where he actually, tore into her, and he got emotional about it too, about the way she's, mocking people. Muslims are a part of Australian society. We need the Muslim community to work with us to try and deal with these extremist people. And what you're doing is not helpful. And he got a standing ovation for it. Not from his own party. Not one member of his own party gave a standing ovation. But the Labor Party and the Greens gave George Brandis a standing ovation. To be fair, that's against the rules of Parliament, and they got ordered to sit down
by the sitting Conservative member.
Yeah. But I thought it was worthy of it.
Not one national Liberal.
Not to my knowledge, no.
Oh, okay. Rather unfortunate.
Well, hopefully he was speaking. I mean, he's the head of the government in the Senate, so hopefully he was speaking for all of them. Maybe.
So technically he was, but whether they were happy about it.
Yeah, I mean, as a technicality he was. I don't know if it...
But they probably weren't happy about it.
I don't know. It's Pauline Hanson, and everyone's worried that she's going to steal the right-wing votes from the coalition. I mean, Cory Bernardi's looking much more effective at that now than Pauline is.
Well, and the National Party's looking kind of fractious, and maybe they're going to lose.
I was a bit disappointed. Apparently Fiona Nash knew she was a British citizen. I think it was Tuesday or Thursday during the week, and she waited till the end of the week to tell everyone. Like, she deliberately held on to the news to announce at the very end of the last sitting session of Parliament for the week, by the way, I'm a British citizen.
Oh, she wanted to bury it.
Yeah.
Bury it in the week.
End of the news cycle.
And her defence was, Mummy and Daddy didn't tell me. Which, I don't know, that doesn't sound like you did a reasonable effort at all. If your parents are British.
She did. Oh, right. So her parents, she wasn't born there.
No.
But she had citizenship conferred.
I think she might have known. She might have been... I can't tell you for sure.
We'll probably look back, and she's probably travelled to England on a fucking ancestral visa or something
It could be the case. Yeah, when Malcolm Roberts like, I'm not a citizen of Britain, then they... BuzzFeed of all newspapers...
BuzzFeed does some good work. There's a lot of people at BuzzFeed. There's a lot of bad. There's a lot of shit.
There's a lot of shit.
There's a lot of listicles.
But they were the ones that
there's some real journalism.
They were the ones who did the investigation of Malcolm Roberts going, look, he travelled on it when he's 19. He fucking does know about it.
Would you guys if you were going to stand for Parliament, would you have gone to check your citizenship? Because obviously...
I already know I'm not eligible for British citizenship.
You've checked into that?
Yeah, I'm like third generation Australian.
I would still check, but...
Are you on third generation both sides?
Oh, actually, no. I've got German on one side, but I don't know. I don't think any other nationalities get passed down that way, so... Irish and English on one side, but generations back, and then a German grandfather.
Yeah, right.
But he came over before the war, so...
Oh, so he's a good German then.
So no, but what I mean is, I think he was naturalised here before the war.
Right.
So I mean, all good spies would have been naturalised
before the war. So we put him in a internment camp during the war.
I think he served in the military. He was in the military for Australia.
As all good spies would be.
He was in Southeast Asia.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Was anyone going to talk about the postal vote?
No.
Okay.
My next thing was Steve Bannon.
Steve Bannon's gone.
But we can talk about the postal vote first.
Oh, the only thing I was going to mention about postal vote, I didn't have an actual specific story, but I was thinking about how at the moment it's a yes or a no vote, and I've always felt that problematic for me personally because I don't feel it's something I should be voting on. Voting on minority rights, it just sounds crude and
Well, you're not voting on minority rights, though. You're voting on if the Liberal Party
Gets to
should
vote.
present
Yeah,
a
but
bill that you haven't seen
I know, but
to then vote on.
but most people think you're voting on marriage equality, and for me, it's like, can't there be like another vote which says, I don't want my vote to empower the no people, but I want to do a protest that I don't believe I should be voting on minority rights. They should just have them, and people.
I believe
Yeah.
that's called a yes vote. No, I'm with you. It's going to the High Court. The High Court's going to be very busy. But it's going to the High Court, and I think we're expecting a resolution on that before the 12th of September.
Yeah.
So it may not go ahead. The government is providing the Australian Bureau of Statistics with $122 million worth of funding without going before the Senate for approval, which is technically not within their capabilities.
Yeah, but you said just moments before that there's the alternatives. There's a yes vote, but that still implies that I believe I have a right to vote on whether a minority should have rights or not.
Should have the same rights.
So what
as
you
me.
want is a yes but vote. Yes, I'm for this, but I should not be asked.
Yes. Yeah.
I shouldn't have been
Well,
asked.
here's the interesting thing. They're getting the Australian Bureau of Statistics to run the postal survey when the ABS can already tell you that 70% of Australians
Yes.
are in favour of marriage equality anyway, so they don't really need to take a survey of every single Australian because we have surveys based on sufficiently large sample sizes.
But then they couldn't stall.
Yeah.
On an issue they know the answer to.
True. What'll be interesting is if the National Party leader and deputy leader change, the coalition may not be so bound to the plebiscite because that was part of the coalition agreement with the National Party,
Or with Barnaby or the National?
the Nationals. So, well, Barnaby and his deputy are both caught up in this. So maybe if new blood comes in, they might be like, yeah, no, we don't care. And then it's just Tony you've got to fight, which, you know.
He didn't make the news this week, really.
I think he was pretty happy not to, because everyone making the news was senators or MPs being, you know, illegally serving in Parliament. I think Tony was pretty happy to be like, I don't need to.
Gonna take a
I
week
don't need
off.
to undermine the government. They're already undermining themselves. My job is done.
Yeah, I do understand where you're coming from. The idea of actually voting on whether people should have the same rights as that that have already been conferred on you. This is not something we should be getting asked.
Well, but I
should just simply
actually
be
think
given.
this is an interesting experiment in direct democracy. Why don't we get a vote on other things? Maybe I want to allow euthanasia. Maybe I want to allow. I want to remove the criminal penalties for marijuana possession. Maybe politicians aren't required anymore. Maybe we can just ask people with direct democracy, and we can save the nation $300,000 per politician at a federal level.
Yeah, but because I mean I know you're being somewhat sarcastic
I mean,
about it.
entirely facetious, but
Yeah, the idea that that basic human rights should be left up to a majority vote just seems really fucking concerning.
It's odious.
Yeah, and we're lucky that's not what's happening in this case exactly, but it's being sold that way in many ways, to being marketed that way for many people. So many people, as you said,
it's been pushed.
many
by
people think that that's what they're doing.
Well, it's been pushed by the coalition that the Australians have a right to say their piece on this issue.
Yeah, and the fact that it should be left to a majority vote of anything like that is weird. Is really odd. Because I think, and this came up in a discussion last night. So what happens when if a no vote comes through? It's not like people are just going to pack up and go home and never discuss marriage equality again. This stuff will not end. It'll keep going on, and the question will come up again. It's weird. It's weird. They just need to do their fucking job and get it sorted
and
out.
I think for some people in the Australian public, they need to see a comparison to what's actually happening. Can I use Godwin's?
Godwin's
They're
law.
just like saying that the German people under the Nazi rule should have been asked whether Jewish people should have been citizens or not. It's like, no, that's an odious.
Yeah. Should we send them to concentration camps?
Yeah.
I don't know. Majority says.
The German people have a right to speak on this issue.
the Third Reich.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no, it shouldn't. There's certain things that you cannot leave up to a majority vote because if a majority suddenly voted to say, "Hey, let's implement slavery again," or handmaidens, as the case may be, it's not right. It doesn't matter whether they vote yes for it or not. That's not something you should be allowing to happen.
whether they believe in it or not is not the question.
Yeah.
If it offends their imaginary friend is not the question either.
Yes. So Steve Bannon,
Yes.
he's
been
got a
shown
new
the
job.
door.
He's got a new job.
Trump's had a really interesting week in the White House. He kind of half dug himself out of the Charlottesville blunder he had with the media, and
And
then
then-
immediately dug himself back into it, and then fired Steve Bannon effectively as well, who I assume is the man putting him up to not being against.
And then congratulated Steve Bannon
on a
for
job well done,
on a
getting
job well
elected.
done, and,
He
and,
went
and
out
going.
really interestingly because obviously he knew he was on the way out because he gave that off the record interview with
which was on the record.
journalist,
Yeah.
which was on the record, and he knew it was on the record.
He never said
He's a
this is-
shrewd operator. It's not like he would accidentally he wouldn't do a Scaramucci.
Yeah.
He knew what he was doing.
Did anyone watch the Colbert
No.
No.
late night with Scaramucci? I haven't either. I need to.
No, I haven't. I've heard it's good, but yeah, I haven't got around to it. But Steve Bannon now back at the helming Breitbart,
Yep. Back at Breitbart.
potentially, possibly even more dangerous than before now.
Well, so far they're sort of implying that he will support the government. He's not going to,
I don't know.
he's not going to do a Tony Abbott.
But
he might do.
It's really odd because I follow a few of these sort of people that write for Breitbart and stuff like that on Twitter.
I tried reading Breitbart. I just couldn't.
Yeah, I know it's terrible. But I
hurts.
follow some of these people that write for Breitbart, Michael Senovich, and a few of these people.
You're a
And-
sucker for punishment.
Yeah, I know. You can't read them for very long, and they're all very anti-Trump. They've all switched. They've all sort of switched off Trump over the last couple of weeks. They've started distancing, and they were all
Are they all pro
100% Trumpers before.
Pro Pence? Mike Pence.
Pro.
Pence. Mike Pence.
No,
Because that's their option. You see?
yeah, no, I get
If you
you,
get
but
rid of
no,
Trump,
they're not.
it's
They're not
Pence.
necessarily pro Pence either. And that's a question that we always get. That the progressives are asking the Democrats because they're so get Trump out, anti-Trump, let's impeach him, and they're going, okay, so then we have President Pence. What do we do then? Because
He's not incompetent either.
he might be more dangerous. Yeah,
He's a religious nut job who's competent.
and we may end up with handmaidens because of that.
No,
Okay,
He's
he's
for
not
handmaidens.
buying the handmaidens. He's not buying the
I'm
handmaidens.
really not. It's annoying because every time I read these reviews of Handmaid's Tale, like, there's never been a more poignant show based on Trump. It's like, how the fuck is this in any way poignant of Trump?
it's not poignant on Trump. It's
It's specifically poignant on Trump.
It's like, I'm not in America, so I don't actually understand 100% of what they're feeling, but like,
The commanders. I didn't see any of the commanders say we grab him by the pussy.
yeah,
I didn't see that.
maybe season 2.
Maybe. So he's back at Breitbart, and of course they don't really know what the reaction is going to be from there. Whether he's going to keep supporting Trump's agendas or
Yeah.
or
Well,
what.
so far he's come out and been quite, soft on Trump. He's basically come out and said, "We're not getting the presidency we thought we'd won," and, and sort of
There's no wall.
and apologising for Trump, sort of suggesting he can't really execute the agenda of the presidency that was won.
Which is true in a way.
These are the same guys that are also distancing themselves from the alt right in Charlottesville. So these guys were they were calling themselves the alt light. The David Rubins and stuff. So the Michael Senovich were all very crypto alt right. Like they were quite happy to be there and be accused of being that, and even describe themselves in that way at sometimes. And then when the shit hit the fan at Charlottesville, all of a sudden, no, we're not alt right. We're not Nazis. We're the alt light, and they've rebadged themselves. And they're trying to do some damage control on their branding.
They need it.
Yeah. Well,
The president's 2 business councils have been disbanded as a result of the Charlottesville of the result of his handling of the Charlottesville
now
riots.
let's get this straight. Trump did fire them at least half an hour before they all resigned.
Yeah, fire them for resigning.
Yeah, he did. Not a great moment in his presidency when almost every single
So who do they have on there?
every advisor he was elected with is gone now. Everyone that he brought in to serve as an advisor, gone.
Who were there? There were some big
Almost
names on there.
cancelled.
Some names of big
Elon
companies.
Musk was on there, but he left earlier.
General Electric. I think Starbucks guy was on there. Which was good because Starbucks tends to be a little more progressive, but I don't know. There was some fairly big
Elon
companies.
Musk was on there for
There
a
was a
while.
lot of people there talking about the fact that it was important to at least give it a try.
Yeah.
You need to be there as a sensible voice and try and have influence on the president, because if you don't talk to him, he can't be influenced by you.
And
at all.
I guess the fact that these things were nominally chaired by Ivanka Trump, they probably started. That was the warning sign for them all. They went,
well, and they weren't being listened to at all.
Yeah.
But I was wondering, do we think that Trump is kind of floundering at the moment?
Who's he? I mean, what's happening? He's got no. his administration is dissolving around him. I mean,
it is,
so
but the word in the press is that it was General John Kelly who suggested that it was time for Steve Bannon to go. So this could be maybe Trump's new chief of staff trying to establish some form of control, but things are collapsing around.
He's not
him.
controlling him because I think you might have seen that the press conference where Trump started mouthing off again, and General Kelly immediately went head down, just went, "Oh God."
Yep. I think he's trying.
He's trying.
Yeah, that's when that was a press conference where it was to deal with one issue, but he couldn't help himself to go back to Charlottesville.
Yeah. Both sides. There's violence on both sides.
He's also
which, oddly enough, he's 50% right in that case, which kind of means, that's 50% more right than he is usually. So that's about it.
He also had some comments about the anti-alt-right protest in Boston, where he first came out and said, looks like there's anti-police agitators there, great show of force by the police, but then, a little bit later he goes, some positive comments for the protests against racism and extremism. It's all over the shop.
Yeah. That's a big protest, actually.
There was 20,000 people, yeah. A lot more
there was only a couple of dozen people trying to attend the right-wing talking session. It was ridiculously outnumbered. But, I mean...
good on them.
Yeah.
It's good that they showed up.
Well, I also think if someone was legitimately there to try and hear these people speak, I don't know who was
There's
speaking.
20,000 there to legitimately hear them speak.
No,
They could have spoken to all of them.
They were there to chant and stop them from speaking. None of the speakers were able to talk. But for the few dozen who actually did believe in their convictions enough to actually brave a crowd of 20,000 to try and... Good on them as well for just showing up. Good on you for that. That's a lot of people who don't like you, don't like your ideas, but you're willing to stand there and go, that's right, I'm a dickhead.
Well, no, because there was some there's probably, and I'm being generous, but there would have been a good number there that a genuine free speech, absolutists, which they're mainly just about this free speech. I mean, there's a lot of others that come along with other agendas, but there's some people there that are genuinely talking about the First Amendment and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so they're not outright Nazis. They just happen to be on the same side of them and on far too many questions, if you know what I mean. So it's.
There was one individual. There was Dean's Doppelganger there, just trying to understand, get in the mindset of them. Hey! I'm just trying to understand.
I just need to hear their side. Can you shut up? 20,000. You just shut up. I need to hear their side.
Yeah.
Please.
I don't think there's anything wrong with being on the same... standing up and defending the rights of someone you disagree with is a very noble thing. I think it's great that we have a society where people like Pauline Hanson can say crazy shit that I don't agree with.
Mm.
And if someone was trying to, shout her down and I happen to be nearby, I'd be like, well, let her ideas undo her way easier than your protest will.
But where these guys are, where the right wing are coming out and people are saying you need to let them get hurt, and it's like, well, you know what? If they didn't already have the man in the fucking White House and a total conservative fucking government and that, and their ideas weren't already getting out there through various platforms, maybe it would be an issue that everyone was shutting them down at this one particular venue. But that's not the case. Their positions and their platform is getting out there no matter what. There's no shortage of right-wing fucking
But that's not how free speech works, Jace.
There's no shortage of right-wing free speech out there.
I'm not saying it's not. I'm not saying it's not, but that's not how it works. You don't get to silence someone just because they have the president
but they're
on
not
side.
being silenced. They can turn up there. It's just going to have other people coming out and saying their shit, possibly louder. It's not like their voice isn't getting out there through whatever other mechanisms are there at this particular event.
I feel like you are denying them the right to speak by shouting them down.
No, but they can speak anywhere they like. They can speak anywhere they like.
Yeah. Look, fair enough.
They got the entire internet, and trust me, that place is a sewer, and there's plenty of right-wing speech coming out on that fucking place.
The swamp, Jason.
Yeah.
This actually ties in nicely to something I was talking about last night at a dinner party, which was something I butchered, so I thought I'd bring it back here with using Google.
Tolerance.
Yeah, it's basically called The Paradox of Tolerance by philosopher Karl Popper. And when I saw it on the meme on Facebook, it was more presented as... It was done in cartoon form, and basically the outline of what the preposition was: should a tolerant society tolerate intolerance? It's a paradox, but unlimited tolerance can lead to the extinction of tolerance. So that was one way to phrase it. But when I went to actual Wikipedia and got a better definition of it, was the paradox of intolerance, first described in 1945, obviously after the World War II.
Yep. Good time to talk about that.
Is a decision theory paradox, which states that if a society is tolerant without limit, their ability to be tolerant will eventually be seized or destroyed by the intolerant.
Maybe. I mean, you got to assume those people who are intolerant sufficiently are capable of influencing people without sounding crazy. Most of the time when someone is preaching hatred, they might influence at best 10% of the population. What's One Nation's vote? 9%?
True.
Something like that. They're going to struggle to get above that. I predict.
But this circles back to the sort of proposition I was presenting to you a week ago. Is what would you describe as your demarcation line, where it's like, actually, I have to set aside my belief in free speech because this shit's going to rob me of my ability to be tolerant?
Where it becomes where someone else's speech reaches the point of it being dangerous
when
for
is
certain other.
Yelling fire in a crowded cinema?
Yeah. Or yeah. There's got to be there's a point. For example,
there's a difference between free speech and then being arrested for being a twat. If you yell fire in a crowded cinema, fine. I think you have the right to do that. But if you get arrested as a result of causing a stampede and someone getting injured, that's also fair.
Well, no, but okay, then we've got historical sort of examples we can look at. At what point does anti-Semitic speech, at what point does that start to endanger the livelihoods or start to embolden people to actually take action and do anti-Semitic behaviour? At some point, there's a line where that will reach a critical mass and people will start doing it. At some point, there was all this anti-Semitic speech that then tripped over and became Kristallnacht.
Wasn't just that, though.
Wasn't just
one
that.
Of the big lessons of World War I that was applied at the end of World War II was in not making the loser pay reparations, not putting a society in a situation where they feel subjugated to the point where they start agitating because they don't have the opportunities that they need. And this is something I talk about all the time, where sometimes you have to listen to people to find out what it is they're actually afraid of, because they're angry and they're scared and they're reacting against their perceived threat, which may not be actually what's messing with them. And this happened with Trump, where he was preaching to people about, I'm going to bring your jobs back. He's fucking not, but he's at least tapped into what they're afraid of in the first place, is that I don't have a job and no one's doing anything about it. And current day politicians are terrible at this. They don't listen to people.
So currently we have a situation where being, say, a Muslim in Australia could be an ordeal.
We had one in the Senate this week.
Could be an ordeal, right? But it could life is probably more difficult as a Muslim in Australia simply because of the kind of speech that's out there.
More difficult than being a gay person during a plebiscite?
Yeah. I'm also saying more difficult. You could use gay people as an example as well. I think possibly Muslims are feeling probably
a gay
more
Muslim
marginalised.
would be very difficult.
I'm feeling fairly marginalised. So, I mean, at some point, speech can hit a point where it would be causing people not just discomfort, perhaps danger, simply because people are speaking outright against them and they're being marginalised as a group. Now, we can go back and we can try to find the root of why people dislike Muslims, but the most immediate effect is it could be dangerous to them simply because the speech is reaching a fervour, a heat where eventually somebody might take some stupid action. For example, in America, where you got right-wing nationalists who suddenly someone took it on themselves just to, admittedly, dickheads on all sides, and it just takes someone who's a little bit fucking tapped out to do it, but someone runs a whole bunch of people down with a car. And, I mean, there's possibly a tipping point where speech becomes outright dangerous.
A car is not speech. I don't believe a court.
No, but what I'm saying is, speech leads to an action eventually. And if there's so much of this speech,
being ignored leads to an action. If you feel like your only recourse is violence because no one's listening to what you're saying, then people react violently.
Is that what?
This is what was. This is the threat of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. If you don't listen to what Martin Luther King is saying,
Malcolm X
next up is violence.
Yeah, but there was a more direct.
And that's the same thing that happens with the alt-right. If you don't listen to the grievances of the ordinary man, next up are these fucking neo-Nazi cunts. So you better do something about it because they are waiting.
Okay, so
they're
doing stuff about it. People are protesting and stuff like that.
No, you're protesting against them.
No,
You're
but
not
I mean,
listening
that-
to them.
Protesting
I
against.
think there's conflation there because you cite one example about what Malcolm X was protesting, but there was a direct line of what he was protesting was a reality, as opposed to the alt-right, which is white grievances, is that
Yeah.
I'm losing privileges
Well,
that
and what
make
I'm
me
not.
better than other
You're,
people.
you're discounting people's emotions.
Well, okay, let's take it back to the
Just
simple
because
example.
someone's feeling something, it can't be right or wrong. It's what they're feeling. You need to listen to what they're feeling and make it okay. Ignoring their feelings, ignoring their emotions,
So okay,
makes them angry.
okay, yeah, and dude, because I'm sure you can talk to a black man, you go, a black American, and say, you really need to listen to these white nationalists over here,
No,
and
not-
hear
I'm
what
not
they're
saying-
fucking saying to
I'm
you,
not
buddy.
saying that
because
the black
they've been.
man needs to
It's
listen.
your fault they hate you.
No, it's your fault you're not listening to them, Frank.
No.
You need to listen to them.
No, you're misunderstanding what I'm saying, intentionally or not. The government needs to listen to what these disaffected white individuals are saying because it's having an impact on American society. It had an impact on the presidency. It had an impact on the Supreme Court. It's had an impact on the three tiers of their government. And they're still feeling they're not being listened to. This is not a good situation to be in. Someone needs to listen to these people. And
Yeah,
allay
but
those
in the
fears.
meantime, these people getting out and saying, it's using this nationalistic speech and white supremacist speech, I don't think it's necessarily making life easier for people for black people around them,
It's not designed
and it
to
might even be making it harder
much
for
like
them.
most protests, it's not designed to make life easier.
Yeah, but
for the people they're
but
against.
I don't even think. I mean, the protest is the culmination of these thoughts. But there's a society around that in which these people are living, like black African Americans are living, where their lives are shorter because of it, and their lives are much harder because of it. It's an existential threat to them.
I think they're different issues. I think that the disaffected alt-right, predominantly white male issues are not as tied to the Black Lives Matter or the fact that they're getting killed at a young age by police officers issue as they think they are. I think that these people obviously aren't as big a believers in the free market as they claim to be because they're predominantly Republicans who believe in the free market, who would be okay with jobs leaving a town and never coming back were it not their own town. But someone needs to do something about opportunities across the board in America. Inequality is ridiculous between the rich and the poor. It's not just the color of your skin. If you're a poor white man in the Rust Belt or a poor black man in Detroit, it doesn't fucking matter. You've got no opportunities.
Yeah, I don't think. I think you're taking what. Sorry, go for it.
Just seems a bit of a conflation. Like when you talk about Black Lives Matter, which is predominantly that they're being assaulted and abused unfairly by police forces. It's like what they're complaining about is a reality as opposed to what the alt-right are complaining about. What causes their... let's talk about the wheat belt where...
Rust Belt.
The Rust Belt, where they're feeling the hardships of their jobs leaving, which is a reality.
For a decade, yeah.
Blaming immigrants for the problem is not reality. That's not what's causing the problem.
But that's what I'm saying. Someone needs to actually do something about the issue. But listen to their fears and try and help
absolutely, someone needs to do something about it. But in the meantime, when you got people marching through the streets, and this is what I was saying about Charlottesville, that protest that happened in Charlottesville, that wasn't the first one that had happened.
No, I know.
So
and it won't be the last.
And they weren't complaining about jobs leaving; they were complaining about police statues being taken down.
Yeah, but this is what I'm saying.
So people living in that,
that'll just keep happening.
But so, for example, black people or recent immigrants living in that community, having white nationalists walk down the street, they might see that as an existential threat. I'm pretty sure if an old Jewish person was living in an area and people with Nazi flags start coming through their area and it starts getting more prevalent and happening more often, they might feel fucking threatened by that, like seriously threatened. They've lived through a situation where this has happened and it possibly might happen again. I mean, there's a tipping point at which the speech might actually become dangerous.
To extend your own example, there's probably old white guys sitting around that if they saw a Japanese man walking down the street might fucking freak
but
out
different.
as well.
He's not living in a society where it's majority fucking Japanese and he's feeling threatened where he's the minority, right? I'm saying
if immigrants keep coming over and they say you're a soldier that served in war in Afghanistan and you start to see more Muslims in your country and you have had these experiences where you feel legitimately intimidated, you might. I'm just saying it goes both ways. Yes, people feel intimidated when they see
it
someone.
It may go both ways eventually, but we're a fucking long way from that.
No, I'm just saying that when you see someone that has in the past wronged you, and you associate their racial group, or in the case of Nazi ideology, whatever you want to label that as, ideological group.
Yeah, but hang
You
on.
will
We're
feel
talking about
intimidated.
one person who sees Nazis and feels threatened by them, and you're talking about another group who sees an Asian person and feels
Well,
threatened by
or
it.
Muslims.
An Asian person doesn't have necessarily an ideology.
Exactly. Yeah.
Whereas the Nazis got an overt fucking ideology that says, no, you're the fucking enemy. You know what I mean? There's a difference there. There's a difference.
But I don't think neo-Nazis necessarily believe that Jews are the problem. Because
I don't know.
that was specific to Germany in the
I mean,
30s.
I'm pretty
anecdotal-
sure neo-Nazis have a major problem with Jewish people.
Jew will not replace us was, I think, the call that was going out.
It was you will not replace
No,
us.
no, no.
Some were saying
No,
Jew.
did you hear it on Majority Report? Because Matt Leck was going, no, I heard people saying that they were saying Jew will not replace us. And he saw some footage. He goes, they're not saying Jew will not replace us. Then he goes, no, someone else said, no.
It depends on the
Look
camera
at this
angle.
footage.
Yeah.
And he goes, oh, no, they really are.
Yeah,
They
it depends on the camera.
really are.
Some ends of the crowd.
Well, no, it
were,
wasn't
some
just the
ends weren't.
camera. It wasn't just camera. There was probably different events and different times and stuff like that. But no, the neo-Nazi or Nazi, doesn't matter how new they are. I think there's, if you're going to call yourself a Nazi, you're quite often buying into something. It's not just a bit of National Socialism. I think there tends to be.
Yeah. So where's Pragmatic Dean that says this is where the line is in terms of free speech?
Pragmatic Dean is suggesting that it's like dealing with the situation of the rise of the Nazis and the results of World War II. You have to fix the fucking problem that caused it, which is the reparations paid in the first place, and you can't fix that easily. If you don't deal with the source, you're going to continue to have these same issues. I don't.
Yeah,
think
but I mean, you
that
may
it
reach
matters.
a point.
These protests don't matter to me.
So, 1935, and the brown shirts are out there in the street hitting people and stuff like that. I mean, or
that's
even
when you've let it get too long, too late.
Yeah, but I mean, I'd almost be arguing that they're almost at that point in America now.
Yeah, I think they're close. I think they're close. And like I said
and I don't
earlier,
think you're going to address
protests. I think those alt-right protests will continue until someone actually deals with the underlying problems. That shit will keep going until someone deals with the underlying problem of blacks dying at a disproportionate rate in police custody. The Black Lives Matter protests will fucking continue until something is done about the actual root cause. That shit is not going to stop.
Once again, we get back to it. It's like you can talk about shutting down. Like you got Black Lives Matter. You were equating Black Lives Matter with a Nazi fucking protest.
No, I'm equating suffering and people feeling like they need their lives to change as the same. The human condition.
It's funny
is basically
because
the same.
one comment was made about these people that are traveling down to Charlottesville. Most of them were out of towners that were coming down. They said, you know, the really disenfranchised aren't the ones driving from fucking Montana with guns in their wagon and turning up for these protests. They weren't necessarily these massive disenfranchised sort of people. They were there for a reason, and it was about white supremacy. It wasn't necessarily about.
I am sure that some of them were there for white supremacy. I'm sure of that. What I'm saying is not all of them are there for that, and that this undercurrent runs deeper in America than just those people protesting. Protesters do not represent everyone upset about an issue. They're not even close to everyone upset about an issue. It's just people who are upset about it enough to get on the street.
The thing is, I've seen it here as well, and there's with Reclaim Australia, and I went along to one of those things, and
and Pauline Hanson polls really well as well. And it's a similar issue in the West. Jobs are leaving due to globalization. Everyone's being lied to as to why their jobs are gone and never coming back.
Well, whilst you cite the number of protesters as they're insignificant, but I think there's obviously a broader part of the community that has sympathies towards that, and the bigger those numbers,
that is my point. Yeah, that the protesters don't represent in any way. Like it's not like every black man that is wants to see less deaths in custody is at a Black Lives Matter protest.
Yeah, it's just that I think sometimes protests are required to hit a critical mass to actually force change, to actually let legislators know that change has to happen. Because sometimes, I mean, it's the current democratic system that has arrived us at this point. Yep. It's not necessarily the protests that's arrived us at this point. It's the current democratic situation. So the protests eventually will arise get to a certain fever pitch that will hopefully help enact change.
Yeah, but I mean, the current democratic process has arrived at this point where, not just rich lords get to vote. Every man gets to vote. But
once you're forgetting that quite often that took some fucking violent uprising to bring it around as well.
I'm not saying it didn't, but within America now, there's equal rights for gay marriage. Not so much here.
But these things were usually forced out. That people, it wasn't just through conscientious debate, and
you made a point earlier that if the plebiscite comes back no for gay marriage, the issue won't go away.
I know
it doesn't have to be a violent change. Eventually, there will be change. It just requires enough. It doesn't have to be a violent
change, but quite often
most young generations already agree with the ideas they want to see implemented. there's just an older generation that are a bit backwards that need to either die or be forced to change.
Yeah, I guess I guess they've been waiting for white supremacy and white nationalism to die in America for probably about 150 years now, and it just doesn't seem to be going anywhere.
Probably longer than that. I mean, it was founded on slavery,
Yeah.
the whole nation, not just the South.
I don't know. I don't think the northern states had slavery. Not a lot of the northern states didn't actually have slavery. They may have allowed the traffic through New York, but like Maine and that never had slavery. And I don't know, but yeah, certainly the South
There
used
was
it
a
as an
few northern
economic.
states had
There
slavery,
was,
wasn't
yeah.
there?
It was the nation's founded on slavery. I'm comfortable saying that.
Mm.
Okay.
And you know, if it wasn't slavery, it's also founded on stealing the land from the indigenous population, much like ours was.
Mm.
But circling back, because this is not where we started.
I'm not sure where we started.
The point I'm trying to make is that you need to deal with the root cause.
Yeah.
And this right wing bullshit that's happening in America is going to happen here as well.
True. And what we can also see from America is they're not dealing with the root causes. The closest we got to them was Donald Trump highlighting what they were and then failing
lying
to
and saying he'd bring jobs back,
Yeah.
which you can't do.
You know, and you know, as it's constantly pointing out, is that you've got this continuing and ever-growing speech is money.
Yeah, I actually think that maybe the solution to America's problems is something like universal basic income. Not like all of their problems, but with the problems with people who don't have enough money from working.
They can't even
a job
agree.
don't
They
have.
can't even agree on a
Healthcare.
universal healthcare.
Yeah.
So universal basic income might be a little way off.
Well,
It's a long way off, but
It is. And the American psyche is so detrimentally against government handouts. It's to them it's an anatema to have a handout from the government as a nation.
Mm.
Universal income's not going to
But
fly.
we got them here in Australia that certain sides wanting to undermine Medicare and things like that gradually.
Yeah.
They also want to do that there.
But,
I mean,
as a nation, we're not against the government helping via our taxes.
no,
the
Australia has
community.
more of a fair go
Yeah.
approach.
yeah.
It's more of our politicians who are bought out who are trying to siphon off government services to the private industry. Whereas in America, they believe that the private industry can deliver a better outcome for every aspect
there's
of
a fair
government.
amount of that here in Australia as well. I've come across, but I mean, where it was certainly of a certain age group and older, where socialism was almost as bad a word as communism. Whereas nowadays you can start hurling, like they're still throwing those epithets like communist, anti-communist sort of epithets around, and anyone under the age of 30 is going, "Why are you saying this?" It's like it's just not even an insult to them anymore.
It's not a bad thing.
It's not really a bad thing. Communists may have got it slightly wrong, but they had the right idea. You know what I mean?
It was implemented poorly.
Yeah,
It was implemented by dictators.
Stalin didn't have his heart in it. Really, he was more about executing other things other than policy.
I think once you've overseen the death of millions of your countrymen during a war, it's probably really hard. I'm not convinced Stalin should have stuck around in power as long as he did. Like,
who was going to take him out? That was the problem.
I think he should have transitioned to someone who hadn't been a wartime leader, like, because you're just so insensitive.
Well, he
You're
wasn't.
so
He wasn't a wartime leader. He was in power before the war for a significant amount of
but as a
time.
result of the war, he was desensitized to just atrocities and deaths. And
he did his purge before the war as well. So.
yeah, he did. He killed.
I'd just say he was fairly desensitized before the war came along.
Maybe
He was
both
a
instances.
nasty piece, I think, all the way through.
Who are we talking about?
Stalin.
Joseph.
Oh, Koba.
Uncle Joe.
Yeah. He was. Yeah, he had a huge reputation of being insensitive. And
Someone related an interesting story where he told a joke, and it was a really terrible fucking joke, and he knew he had just had this dark sense of humor, where they started clapping. They was in the massive fucking hall where they started clapping, and none of them want to be the first person to stop clapping, so it just kept going. And apparently he was just really smiling there because he knew no one was going to stop until he left or sat down or something like that. So I don't know, nasty piece, but probably self-aware.
I think his famous quote is "One death is a tragedy, a million is a statistic."
Yeah.
Like, I just think that, like, anyway, we all agree that maybe he should have left power earlier than he did. But necessary evil. Did a great service during the war for his people, but at a significant cost in blood.
All right, what else have we got, boys?
I'm out.
I'm out.
6:30, I'm done.
Well, thank you for listening
That's
to our very
Serious work ethic you have there.
warbling
Well,
session.
it was long.
once again, we sort of circled back onto a topic we discussed last week. But
And
hopefully,
last
we've
night.
got it out of our systems.
Well, it's not our fault if Donald Trump can't get his Charlottesville comments out of his head. He just keeps coming back. Why is he doing it?
Well, it was like when he was talking about the numbers who attended his inauguration. He
Yeah,
just couldn't
again.
let it go.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the fact that, he probably did win the popular vote. He's trying to say that. I won so many electoral colleges and I probably did win the popular vote. He can't leave it alone.
Anyway, thanks for listening.
I like
I've
it
been
when he circled
Franco.
back one more
I'm
time.
Jason.